by the Father. Let's just start with the Father and the Son, the relationship between them in love, and I think you'll get the sense of things, and then, of course, we'll proceed to the Spirit. You see, what's happening is that the Father is loving the Son. And what does love mean? Love means gift of self, right? Love is always an outpouring of self. Love is always a going beyond the self. Love is always, then, as it were, taking the whole of one's interiority, the whole of everything that one is in mind and in spirit, and giving it away. Okay. So the Father is loving the Son, and the Son is beloved. And so the Son absorbs the love from the Father, the self-gift from the Father. And upon absorbing the self-gift of the Father, the Son takes that love and gives back to the Father, gives back to Abba, gives back to the one with whom he has such a deep and intimate relationship that he calls him Abba, Daddy. Now, the Father then is, if we can put it that way, he is a giver-receiver. And then this second self-consciousness that's making an unconditional use of the infinite power source, the Son, the beloved one is a receiver-giver. But they're loving. They're just loving in a different relationship to each other. And then we get to a kind of a third manifestation of love. You see, love is not just gift of self. Love is a gift of the us. So actually, when, say, a husband and wife, just to give an example, an analogy here, when a husband and wife are deeply in love, they just don't look at each other inside the relationship and just kind of stare in each other's eyes all day. What do they do when the unity exists and they draw strength from that inner unity of their relationship? Well, they share it with other people. They not only share it with other people, they welcome other people into the relationship. And of course, me as a priest, I get welcomed into relationships all the time. As a matter of fact, people are always inviting me over to their house for supper. And when I get to their house for supper, right, when there's that welcoming relationship, when there's that us love, when that us love, right, when there's a gift of the us, not just a gift of self, when there's a gift of the us, notice what happens. I want to stay there all night long, and therefore they have to kick me out at midnight. Now, the idea is, of course, why did I want to stay? Because there was something welcoming about that us love. There was something about giving the us away. Well, the Spirit is kind of the recipient of the us love, the relational love of the Father and the Son. So the Father and the Son are deeply in love, interiorly deeply in love, and they form a unity. And the Spirit, and this is just an analogy, is kind of like a child. And the Spirit, like a child, just takes that us love of the Father and the Son together, as parents can love a child together. And what happens? The Spirit then redounds the us love right back to the Father and the Son in their unity. Have you ever noticed that? That a child can just redound love back to the Father, and they receive love back. The love that they receive back is not like the love that they're giving each other. It's a qualitatively different love. It's the love that is redounding through the eyes of the child back to them. Well, the Spirit is like that. The Spirit is the perfect reception of love from the unity of the Father and the Son. The Spirit is the beloved of the us love of the Father and the Son. And the Spirit then is the giver, too, of us love, the redounder back of that us love through the Spirit's quote-unquote eyes back to the unity of the Father and the Son in love, which completes it. But you see, that's the Trinity's inner life. And that inner life of love, that's joy. And when we say as Christians that God is love, we really mean that there is interpersonal love going on in the Trinity. That there is real interpersonal love going on through that one infinite power source, through that one infinite nature, through the three persons, the three self-consciousnesses, making an unconditional use of that one infinite power source in love. But the Trinity goes so much further, and this will have to be reserved to another series later on, probably called Emmanuel. But the key thought would be this: if the Spirit, if the Trinity were love, wouldn't it be just like the Trinity to just want to take the fullness of interior love and create little beloveds in the image of themselves, and then share with those little beloveds the entire mystery and the entire joy of the interpersonal love that is taking place infinitely within the Godhead unto the little beloveds' joys, until each one of those unique beloveds, those uniquely good and different beloveds in all of their finite forms, all of a sudden come back as a chorus right into the divine life of the Trinity in love. And that would be something typical of God. And that gets us to our second doctrine. And that second doctrine is the incarnation of Jesus Christ. Now here we want to get just down to, first of all explain, well, how can this happen, right? I mean, boy, what do you mean Jesus Christ is true God and true man? I mean, this is a tough one. Let's just take a look at this for just a second, because we know that the Son, the second person of the Trinity, we know that the Son is making an unconditional use of an infinite power source. What do you mean that the Son became man, became human, became finite, became incarnate? Now, just back up for a second, because there's something really, really important here. The Son became man. God did not become man in the sense of the nature of God did not become man. The Son of God became man. Now, you can't say that the nature of God became man. Why is that? Because the nature of God is the power of God, and the power of God is unrestricted. It's literally absolutely simple and has no intrinsic or extrinsic restrictions. Have you ever tried to fit infinity into a finite form? Have you ever tried to take the infinite nature of God and try and put it in a finite human form? Won't work. That's called a contradiction. And Christianity never claimed that the nature of God became man. Christianity never claimed that the one infinite nature of God entered into a finite form. Not only is it a contradiction, it's an absurdity. Now, what did Christianity claim? That the second person of the Trinity, the second self-consciousness, making an unconditional use of that one infinite power source, that second person in the Trinity actually entered. That second self-consciousness, not the nature, not the infinite power of God, the second self-consciousness entered into human form. Now, let's see if we can get this a little, if we can get an analogy to understand. I mean, how could the self-consciousness of the Son, while the self-consciousness of the Son is making an unconditional use of the infinite power source, making an unconditional use of the infinite nature of God, how could this second self-consciousness actually enter into a human form and still continue using unconditionally the infinite nature, the infinite power of the Godhead, of the nature of the one infinite power source? How could the Son do this? Well, it's real simple. Not really. But here's the thought. Here's the analogy. It's really a crude analogy. So don't go around thinking that this somehow explains it. But it gives you an idea of how it can happen. And in my analogy, I'm just going to make recourse to kind of like what happens when we dream. Not right? God's incarnation is not like a human dream. This is just an analogy to understand how a self-consciousness can be in two different worlds. Now, I'm asleep, right? And while I'm asleep, something happens. Literally, my own self-awareness, my self-consciousness, actually goes into a thought, goes into one of my thoughts. In fact, conditions itself by one of my thoughts, and actually enters into my dream world, my thought world, right? And my self-consciousness, upon entering into that thought world, let's say this is a good dream. And all of a sudden, I have the capacity to run the 100 in 9 flat. Now, of course, anybody who knows me and knows my lack of athletic ability knows that this could never be true. In the real world, when my self-consciousness is in my real body, which has real limitations compared to everybody else in the world. But in my dream state, I can not only run the 109 flat, I can fly. I also have the IQ of